Welcome to Still Evolving, where we explore the truth behind lasting performance and resilience. Rather than relying on perfection or superhuman ability, our conversation will highlight how real strength emerges through simple, intentional habits grounded in self-compassion, adaptability, and the ability to grow through life's inevitable setbacks. Dr. Tracy Brown, known as Dr. Trey, the strategy implementation specialist and serves as chief of staff and head of project management system at Stream Data Centers. With more than 25 years of experience in IT, information security, and emerging technologies, she's a trusted advisor to executives on strategy, change management, and complex program execution. An Air Force veteran with a background in electronic intelligence, Dr. Trey brings a disciplined and strategic approach to leadership and risk management. She holds CISSP and PMP certifications, along with executive certifications from MIT in AI, machine learning, and operations. A co-author of You Can Stop Stupid, an internationally recognized speaker, she is passionate about securing the digital world and mentoring the next generation of technology and security leaders. Please welcome Dr. Tracy Brown to the show. Tracy, welcome to Still Evolving. Grateful to have you here and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So am I. Thanks so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it, Amy.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start off giving you some space and time to share a bit on your journeys. Share with us a bit where you came from, what you're doing now, and some highlights in between.
Sure. It's been quite an interesting journey, kind of like the feather floating along in the wind sometimes. It felt like I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up in a working class family. My father was in construction and my mother worked on a line at Motorola. It was a really grounded start. And I wound up going into the military. I was in the Air Force for a while. And interestingly enough, I had a knack for technology. So I wound up in cryptography and kind of early cybersecurity. And I loved computers when I got out of the Air Force. I realized that I liked putting them all together and wound up in technology for a long time in network administration, a little bit of security. But interestingly enough, I also loved to sing. And so I did that for a while. I wound up going on tour with a group called Sister Sledge. I started my own entertainment business and putting together events and weddings and all kinds of stuff, which brought organization, my ability to organize events and projects to light. And then those two, technology and project management, married in a way in corporate America. And I wound up managing projects in technology. And because I was a performer too, people asked me to do software training and then training in general and leadership training. So it evolved into that. I wound up getting into IT and business consulting because of those skill sets. And then realized consulting wasn't my favorite thing to do. So I came back into corporate as an IT program manager in data center. And I was working with cybersecurity, with IT, critical infrastructure, and that led me into bigger and bigger projects and then leading PMO offices for global project management teams. And because I had experience in data center, that led me into becoming a chief of staff, which is where I sit now as chief of staff and head of project management office for Stream Data Centers. So it's been quite an interesting journey, a lot of twists and turns, but ultimately, I think just natural capability and skill sets that I sharpened along the way. But what I always found interesting was that I call it being an unconventional expert. The unconventional ways that I have captured information and knowledge and sharpened skills have really led me into fun, cool, interesting twists and turns in my career. So I encourage that for others. That's a little
I love
about me.
it. And I love hearing the marriage of the two passions and skill sets.
Yeah.
And so many, I think of the conversations I have with my daughters. I push back sometimes when people ask, well, what do you want to do? And, at 17, 19 years old, the jobs that may end up being in aren't even conceived of today, right? And I think of your journey. I mean, who would have thought? I guess some people in tech, probably more wiser than me, were aware of the AI revolution. It was coming. The AI wasn't as new to them as it perhaps is to the average consumer. But yeah, just having that openness to seeing where it evolves and knowing that you are prepared, giving this new opportunity that you have even now. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, even when you mentioned cybersecurity, I think of the challenges that that brings, or even the data centers now, and what feels so fast paced and uncertain for many in
Mhm.
this period of time. Can you talk a little bit about, as a leader, what you have found that has been helpful in leading through adversity and challenge, or even as an individual, right? When we face adversity and challenge, what helps us evolve and grow through that, not just get through it kind of thing?
Oh
Would you mind
gosh.
sharing a bit on that?
Yeah, I'll do what I can. I think that a lot of my career I really just soldiered through, and maybe that's the ex-military in me and a bit of a grittier upbringing where you get through because you have to, and a lot of it is survival. And it wasn't until I got much older that I realized that I had to find a mentor and then later on a sponsor and what those really were and how they were different and how they could contribute to my sanity, my growth, and handling challenges that came up in my career. And I didn't see that so much as I was growing up. And so now I try and do that for other young women that are starting out in their career or even mid-career that need some help and support to know that they're not alone. And I think that was what was so challenging for me is that I felt really alone
Uh-huh.
and in survival mode when I would hit challenges early on in my career, probably until my mid 30s at least.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm approaching mid 50s. So I've learned a lot and hopefully contributing to others along the way, but really finding a mentor that I could bring challenges to and ask for not so just solutions, but how do I learn to have a broader perspective? How do I learn to look at things from different angles, from different levels? And how do I use that to leverage solutions? Right? How do I come up with better solutions? And my mentors were great. And they weren't always mentors that I worked with at the same organization. They were people that I really admired their way of leading, or I admired their thought processes or their ability to make decisions or their ability to function in ambiguity. There were certain characteristics that they would have that I went to them and asked questions around a particular challenge. So,
Uh-huh.
for example, if I'm having a hard time making a decision, then the people that I know that I think do well with decision making, fast decision making, if it's on the edge, whatever that might be, then I would go and say, "Hey, I'm posed with this particular problem. Could you help me through it?
Uh-huh.
Like, how do you process your information so that you make good decisions or the best
Uh-huh.
that you can?"
Right.
And then later on, some of them became sponsors. They saw my growth. They helped me along the way. I listened to their feedback and I would either follow the path that they suggested or modify it to be more authentic to me. And they saw that growth and initiative and then later on became sponsors, which is how I came into the role that I'm in now, which
Wow.
is fantastic. Now they're advocating for me outside of my organization or outside of the area that they know me in and recommending me for different roles, being on a board
Uh-huh.
for organizations or even in a position within a company.
Super powerful. You know, I'm reminded, my mom tells this story of about me when I was like a little girl, probably a three something. And she even makes fun of the voice that I possibly used then. But, you know, when I was trying to do something, Amy would always say, I do it myself. I do it myself. And the reality is, none of us here have any of the quote unquote accomplishments, success, kind of where we've grown and kind of come to alone. And the impact of the journey, right, to sustain high performance, it is a load that we carry that without those strong connections, and they take many forms. You mentioned mentorship early on, sponsorship. Some people do coaches. Some people, I mean, I remember early in my career, it is lonely. There was not many sports psychologists at that time, early 2000s. There's only like 22 of us in NCAA institutions, but we all came together and all of us just were able to take this like deep collective breath of
Yeah.
and felt the support and strength and just a get it factor of what we were
Hmm.
going through. And to have those connections along the way, not only does it, as you mentioned, help us refine skill sets, decision making, for example, that you mentioned, but it also just lends and provides so much of that antidote to the stress response that we're carrying along the way, and really helps with that
Absolutely.
resilience. So I appreciate you also paying it forward. And it sounds like now in your role, like you're able to connect with those who are growing and getting started, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I really enjoy that too. It's interesting because and for years I've asked friends of mine, like, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to describe my area of expertise. And you hear from a coach that said, go ask your closest friends, what do they come to you for? And interestingly enough, they all said, well, I come to you for everything. It might be a relationship question. It might be a
Yeah.
question about work. It might be a question about education. It might be a question about travel, whatever it might be.
Right.
So it was really interesting because later on I figured out the dots that were connected is, especially in a chief of staff role or project management role, we wind up being master generalists, and that seems to be a trend. And for many years I didn't embrace that being a master generalist is actually a thing.
Yeah.
And it's okay, and to use that to the best of my ability. And so now I encourage that in folks that, I'm really not sure where I have mastery or where I should focus on. Okay, well, you might be multi-passionate and that's okay. Let's take a look at some of those things and see how they can all fit together and marry in a really cool and fun and passionate way.
I appreciate that, just being able to flex that perspective and seeing many of these qualities as strengths, right? Like that it doesn't have
Right.
to be this one model of mastery that we're prescribed to. So
Exactly.
absolutely. I'm curious about like motivation, like what fuels you in this journey?
Great question. I think that would depend on what part of life I'm trying to move forward or I'm moving
Uh-huh.
in.
Uh-huh.
Ultimately, and it may be, and I'm wondering if maybe my answer would change depending on where I'm sitting or what's going on around in my life. But what I'm going to say is what fuels me is to make a difference in a way that I didn't have when I was younger. I grew up in a working class family. They knew blue collar jobs, and I didn't learn about entrepreneurship or even have an example of a bigger or greater success and even a money mindset, right?
Uh-huh.
And I would like to help young women experience that or see that or have somebody that they could get information from that exposes them to the greater possibilities of life when their environment doesn't really allow it, or they don't see it
Uh-huh.
for themselves, or
Uh-huh.
have others that have experienced it and can be a guide or a beacon or an example in that way. And so that fuels me. Additionally, I chose to not have children, but I wanted to make a difference, which led me into my academic career and
Okay.
getting my doctorate. I wanted to contribute to a body of knowledge and continue to contribute in a way that would be helpful, that would be lasting. And so that drives me as well. Where can I make a mark and help others that's going to contribute to a body of knowledge or contribute to a future and making things better?
It sounds so grounded, like rooted in that upbringing, your family, your early experiences, and then also just the power that comes from that openness, the curiosity, the drive to learn, to be able to then ultimately give back and help afford opportunities or access. So
Yeah.
tremendous. Yeah.
When I was sitting on the commencement floor for my master's program, the
Uh-huh.
speaker was Dr. Condoleezza Rice.
Wow.
And I remember her saying that there are people out there that are smarter than you, faster than you, can do things better than you, but you had the opportunity to have this education. And now it is your obligation to give back. And I took that to heart. I really, really loved that idea because it's true. It's
And it's
absolutely true.
also from a very humbled perspective, right? Like when we work in private industry and corporate America, it matters like showing up, feeling prepared and competent and knowing I can give back. But the reality is that there's always someone smarter at the table. Right. And how do we learn from each other? Because each one's experiences are so powerful and can help with whatever challenge or whatever problem we're trying to solve, just illuminate another side of it that we haven't seen, even though we have these intellect or our own experiences. So, yeah, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
How do we help others learn and then rising tide, right?
Yeah. I mean, certainly that is fuel. And nonetheless, like it is a load that we carry, right? Like it's a grind that these careers. I'm
Yeah.
curious, what do you do to kind of recover, take care of yourself so that you can sustain this long journey?
Ooh. I am interestingly an introvert.
Okay.
I recharge on my own in my own quiet bubble. And most of my life, my friends and my family didn't understand or believe that because they see the performer side of me and think, oh, well, the person on stage is that's not an introvert, that is an extrovert. But that's not true. On stage, I am in a bubble where I am performing for a crowd and singing for a crowd and talking to the crowd. It doesn't require a reciprocated, it's not reciprocated conversation. It's not a two-way channel. It's just one. It's just me. I'm performing, I'm giving, and to me that feels good. And then I can collapse back into my bubble safely on the stage and be on my own. I do that as well. I have to have time where I can just be quiet and not have to talk or make decisions. I can just relax. Sometimes that's a little bit of light meditation. Sometimes it might be reading. It could be listening to my favorite music, whatever fills me at that particular time, because I have an eclectic taste in music as well. But I really do feel that when I need to recharge, I have to take that time for myself and have my alone time, my quiet time, and use that to just get my brain relaxed again,
Yeah.
open up bandwidth for
Yeah.
what challenges lie ahead. And some people are different. I have friends and family that are also extroverts and they need to be out and have people around
People
them and
around.
have, all kinds of things going on. Maybe they go to a casino or they go to, a restaurant or they go hang out with friends. And sometimes for me, that's overstimulating.
Yeah.
And so I
The
retreat,
key
and
of
that's
just
what I
knowing
find.
yourself,
It's
right? I mean, just
knowing
knowing
exactly.
what is going to help you recover.
And it's going to change from time to time. So respect and honor that and do that, but absolutely figure out
Yeah.
what it is and follow it.
Absolutely. It's powering through. It's just eventually, if you're on E, the car is going to stop. So
Yeah, so don't do that.
appreciate wears you out. I like to wrap up by leaving with our audience. What would be that immediate actionable takeaway? Maybe a one thing that helps ground you, keeps you on track, like in the pursuit long term, maybe something you do daily or weekly, routinely, that really helps you continue to step into the roles that you have with that high performance.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things. One is to recharge in the way that feels right at the moment.
Hmm.
And another is to always learn. You know as well that being a lifelong learner is a fulfilling thing in life, but it's also helpful for maintaining high performance. I was listening to an audiobook by Jocko Willink, who's a SEAL, and extreme leadership, and to never ask, others to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. And so I encourage others to stay the constant student and always be willing to learn and grow. And I find comfort in that. That helps me. And it's a practice that I have at least on a weekly basis, if not on a daily.
Awesome. Awesome, Tracy. Such a great conversation. Very appreciative of your time and joining me today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.